My friend and I, Paul Rimmer, did a documentary film recently on North Wales, and we went to Mold first, and we covered Mold, and Mold's a small town, there's a lot of history there, and we covered the history of Richard Wilson, the famous landscape gardener, landscape gardener then, I meant landscape painter, who is buried in Mold at the back of St Mary's Church, and he's got a tombstone there, and there's a plaque which tells you all about Richard Wilson and what he achieved. And from the church, we went up to Colomendy because there's a public pathway which takes you up the back. Of course, the Denbigh County Council will love to shut that down because they don't want anyone seeing Colomendy at all, because they've got they're involved with it, and a lot of nonsense has gone on up there over the last 3 years. For the first year, this is 3 years ago. For the first year, I was initiating a campaign against the Liverpool City Council, who own Colomendy Camp and the Hall, and the Grade 2 listed buildings at the back. Or one of the buildings is Grade 2 listed, which is the barn. But the other buildings at the back are Grade 2 listed as much as they are curtilage buildings attached to the barn. And in front of this farm, which is at the back of the Colomendy Hall, was what was called the Colomendy Gardens. And it was in these gardens that Richard Wilson sat and painted Movama and the Movama and the Clwydian Range and the Allen Valley. He painted this from that garden. And they've just let that fall into ruin. The Liverpool City Council has. And when this property was given, when it was leased to Kingswood, Kingswood had the responsibility of keeping that farm and the farm workshops in a good state of repair, because when they were given to Kingswood, they were in a good state of repair. But now they've been over a 10-year period. They've just been allowed to fall down over a 10 or 11-year period. Anyway, it was good to see that they put scaffolding up around the buildings that I was campaigning about, that I was complaining about, because Kingswood had breached their lease. Now, how did I know Kingswood had breached the lease? Well, the Liverpool City Council officers, sent me the lease by mistake over the internet. They emailed it to me by mistake, in a PDF file. So I've got the lease, the 50-odd page lease. And all the way through the lease, you can see that Kingswood have breached their lease with the Liverpool City Council because they've let these buildings fall into a terrible state of repairs, which, as you can see on the film that I've made, if you look at the other film which is on this YouTube site, this YouTube account, and I went up there and I took photographs, and Kingswood tried to have me arrested. They said I'd committed, when you go onto land and you never got commission, I'd committed trespass. So I had the Ruthin police ringing me up. I said to them, listen, it's not a criminal offence to commit trespass. Tell Kingswood to take me to court and the Liverpool City Council for trespass. They've got to take out a private prosecution against me. And they said, yes, but a lock was broken off a door. I said, the whole buildings are just falling down. They said the door, that this lock was broken off, and we never broke no lock off. The door was open. All the roof had fallen and everything. Why on earth would you want to break into to a building where all the roof is falling? Anyway, we got pictures, and we gave those pictures to the Liverpool Echo, as you'll see in the film on this site. The Liverpool Echo never did anything because the Liverpool Echo is complicit with the Liverpool City Council. Nothing must be said or done that can harm the name of the Liverpool City Council. So they covered it in as much as that Kingswood were the heroes. When they weren't the heroes, Kingswood had quite plainly breached their lease. And I have evidence of this because a senior officer of the council told me that Kingswood, as far as they were concerned, Kingswood have breached their lease. Now, if you go to my Facebook page and you look up Colomendy Farm is falling down, or you look up Mike Lane, you can get to that on my Facebook page. It is a bit up and down, the Facebook page that it's on. But if you look at it closely and you went through it and studied it date to date, you'd see that it's dreadful what the Liverpool City Council has done in all the years that Kingswood have been in charge of that camp. The Liverpool City Council never once went up as landlords and checked that the lease, that the covenants on the lease concerning the maintenance of the buildings, because the farm and the farm workshop were termed as excluded buildings, you know. Never once did they go up to check that the buildings were being kept in a decent state of repair. So the buildings were just allowed to fall down. And just listen to what Paul Rimmer says here about Richard Wilson.
This looks pretty anonymous here, but it is the resting place of Richard Wilson. Richard Wilson was the first major landscape painter in Britain. He painted he did the Grand Tour, he went to Italy and learned his skills, and then he came back to North Wales, which was his home, and he painted some of the rustic scenes of North Wales and the Allen Valley and the Clwyd Valley. And it was unusual in those days because people hadn't really started taking in country landscapes as the major genre of art, you know. But Richard Wilson, he pioneered these landscape paintings. And very classical in its structure, his landscape paintings. They were strikingly different from the Victorians who went into great detail. He had sweeping scenes, but he was laid to rest here. Died aged 69, he's a member of the Royal Academy of Arts, but he had a severe drink problem, which is not unusual with artists, you know. And so he was a bit of a pioneer here, bit of a significant figure. We'll go to Colomendy Hall later on and see some of the scenes that he actually painted, but probably the most famous person to be buried here. This is the Allen Valley, Moel Famau. This was the start of the Offa's Dyke, which goes right along the Welsh border, which separated Wales from England at the times of the Saxons. It's a beautiful view here. This was painted by Richard Wilson at the end of the 18th century. One of the first landscape paintings in England. People would have just ignored this scene of just being part of the countryside. But suddenly they started to value English countryside. They realised that it was a special place that needed to be preserved and cared for. Moel Famau there, Moel Famau at the top. You can see there's a construction there where there was an Iron Age fort. It's a beautiful scene. This is the heart of North Wales, the Welsh countryside.
I mean, we're in the farm, and you'll see now that there's scaffolding around the buildings now that I complained about. Now, I can't find out whether they're going to do any work to repair these buildings, but there are scaffolding around. No repairs have been done, but scaffolding has been put around them. Now, I don't know whether they've put that scaffolding around them to demolish them, or they're going to do repairs on them. Can I get any information from the Liverpool City Council? No. The Liverpool City Council have served me with a banning order to stop me from getting information off them. And the Denbigh County Council are even worse than the Liverpool City Council because they're involved in this issue as well. And so is Cadw, which are the Welsh history people. They know about this issue too. And about 300 or 400 people have watched the film that I made. So maybe one of these or a couple of these people have said, look, something should be done about this. This isn't right. We have a private sector company here who are acting as the operators of this camp now because it's an outdoor adventure camp now where kids go and climb mountains and do zip wire and everything. I mean, it's a pretty good show up there. But the fact is that Kingswood let these excluded buildings fall into terrible disrepair. You know, they were given to them in a fantastic state and they just let them fall down. Did no maintenance on them or anything. And then blamed vandals. There's no vandals go up there, you understand me? It's in a prosperous middle class suburb. You know, in the Allen Valley, no vandals go up there. Only ramblers and people who walk their dogs. And they're mainly all middle class people. So this is the situation, you know, with the Liverpool City Council and Kingswood. They tell lies. and they won't give information out, so you don't really know what's going on. The guy who was sat on the cabinet, the executive member at the time, who covered this issue, was a guy called, a councillor called Malcolm Kennedy. He's a Geordie. He sat on the Liverpool City Council as an executive member, and he covered the issue of this camp and these buildings. And I tried to get information from him. I even met him at during the council elections. I met him in the hall where the councillors' votes were being counted, and he still wouldn't give me any information. I spoke to Joe Anderson. He was brief about it. He's the mayor of Liverpool, but he's been overridden now by a Metro mayor, but he's still the mayor of Liverpool now because he still has a year or two to run of his mayorship. And this was a couple of years ago, because this has been going on for 3 years, And it says in the lease that, when a breach of lease has been identified like this, work should be carried out within 1 calendar month of the identification of the breach of lease concerning the damage to these buildings, but it never happened. It's 3 years now, and they've only just put scaffolding up now, and nobody knows what they're going to do. Some people think they were going to build houses and knock this farm site down, but it's a Grade 2 listed barn, and the buildings attached to the barn are curtilage buildings, so they are Grade 2 listed too. But the Denbigh County Council tried to get around that, and, they want to demolish this and build a road up there and build houses there or do something there. So I don't really know what's going on. It's pointless me ringing up the Denbigh County Council or the Liverpool City Council, because they won't tell me, and they'll give me the runaround, because this is the way council officers operate. Council officers don't care about our history. They don't care about our culture. They don't care, Council officers are just there to earn their wages, get a fantastic wage because they do. And they sign like a secrecy policy where they can't say anything, And that's what they do, especially senior officers. Senior officers are oppressive entities within our councils who are very devious, and they create, a narrative within their glossy magazines that bears no relation to reality, because they're not centred in reality deliberately. Anyway, I got onto the Welsh Assembly member for that area. I can't pronounce his name because, as you can see, it's a pretty hard name to pronounce. It looks like Lear Grufford. Anyway, his office is in Ruthin. I got onto him about it, and his secretary was very good at the beginning, but then turned on me, took sides with the council officers in the Denbigh County Council and the Liverpool City Council, and turned on me as being a nuisance, and that's what happened. So in the end, I couldn't get any information from these people, even though this camp is a publicly owned building. Now, do you know what that means? Because a lot of people don't. It's owned by the Liverpool City Council. Who owns the Liverpool City Council? We do. It's a public body owned by the people, so they're supposed to act on our behalf. But they don't. They tell us lies. Do you understand me? And Colomendy belongs to the people of Liverpool. The Kingswood Colomendy camp, even though Kingswood have leased it on a 30-year lease, I think it is, it's still owned by the people of Liverpool. It was leased to Kingswood, I think, in 2007. I'll put it at the front of the copy of the lease up. But it's already on the other documentary film that's on this same account, this YouTube account. And, they don't care. They don't care. They never went up and checked the camp out, as I said before. They didn't fulfil, good service as being the landlords. They never checked out that the covenants on the lease were being adhered to by Kingswood. And if you go to part of this camp now, it's just falling down. It's in a dreadful mess. They haven't even got gardeners up there, and it says on the lease that they're supposed to have gardeners, looking at the shrubbery and the trees. And if you look at it when I put it on in a minute, it's still overgrown with grass up there. Except, I'm not having to go Kingswood over the part where they've, which is Kingswood Camp, which is an outdoor facility camp with zip wires and underground caving, canoeing. They're in the school that was built, the former Glen Allen School that was built in 1969, 1970. They're in there and they've remodernised that. They've spent a lot of money on that. And they've done Colomendy Hall up, because that was wrecked for a while, but they've spent some money on that, or the Liverpool City Council has. But the buildings which are, part of the Colomendy Hall, which is the farm workshops, which are extensive, and the farm itself, have just been left to fall down because it's built on a plateau, and when the storms come, it's ripped some of the roofs clean off. So we don't know what's going to happen, whether they're going to demolish these buildings. And like I said before, the gardens at the front of that farm, which now are just like wasteland with rubbish dumped on them. The famous artist Richard Wilson used to sit there and paint. What a mess it's in now. And the history people up there have done nothing. Even though I've been on to the history people, they don't do anything. You see, you're dealing a lot with middle-class people up there, you see, and a lot of them, even if they do something, they claim the glory for it, even though it was me that initiated it. I went up there and spoke, to the parish councillors. Well, up there, they're called community councillors, but they're similar to parish councillors, what we have in England. And I told them about it, and whilst I was telling them, there was a council officer there who never told me he was a council officer. And, this guy was involved in this road they were going to build up from the main road in Loggerheads up to this farm. He had a vested interest. And there he was, sat at this meeting as, a community councillor, and he didn't tell us that he was a council officer. This is the situation, and this is the way council officers operate. If there's any glory to be got, they'll steal it from you, and say that they initiated it when it wasn't, it was me. And like I said before, the Liverpool City Council sent me the lease by mistake. And like I said, right through the lease, Kingswood have not, adhered to the covenants on the lease for the maintenance of these excluded buildings. And, they've actually breached their lease. Anyway, in conclusion, let's hope that this scaffolding that's been put around these buildings is being put there to put right the damage that has taken place to these buildings over the last 10 or 11 years since Kingswood took over the camp. And let's hope that, the Liverpool City Council put right this damage, because, we still don't know whether they're going to demolish these buildings or whether they aren't, or whether they're going to, repair them. But the fact of the matter is, I can't speak to the Liverpool City Council because I've been banned from speaking to them. I received a letter from them banning me from speaking to them. And let's hope that the Liverpool Echo can do something on this story, but I doubt it very much. The Liverpool Echo don't care, The Liverpool Echo work to the maximum that nothing can be said or done that can damage the Liverpool City Council, in any way. So they'll always spin doctor a story in such a case as this in a favourable manner towards Kingswood and towards the council. And this is the sad situation that we're in. Our councils aren't really democratic anymore. We've got a handful of people in every council throughout this country. A handful of people, a handful of senior council managers, maybe 8 or 10 senior council managers, and a handful of what you call executive members, who are executive councillors who sit on this cabinet. And they've got too much power. And the councillors that sit in the town hall and go to the full council meetings every 6 weeks or however long it is, they're only making decisions on major decisions, But these cabinets are making most of the decisions now, and the other councillors are just town hall lobby fodder. They're just going along there to make an appearance. It's absolutely unbelievable. It can only happen in Great Britain, and this is why local government and central government needs a massive overhauling, because it's not democratic. Anyway, thanks.